Missouri lawmakers are now looking into crimes related to illegal immigration. The newly formed Missouri House Committee on Undocumented Immigrant Crimes just had their first meeting. Our Missouri Capitol reporter Hannah Falcon reports on what happened.
Today was the first time that the public could tell lawmakers to their face what they think of this newly formed committee. But some Hispanic Missourians expressed concern that this committee makes their community feel unwelcome.
We need to humanize the work of immigrants.
Edmund Gonzalez Herrera is an immigration lawyer and immigrant from Colombia. He's concerned that the Missouri House's Committee on Illegal Immigrant Crimes could encourage hate crimes against Missourians from other countries, regardless of their immigration status.
Many of my clients fled their home countries because they were victims of crimes like rape, kidnapping, murder, torture, and more. They ask me why people is saying that they are the rapists, the murderers, and other things.
Gonzalez Herrera asked if the committee would consider changing the phrase illegal immigrant in the name of the committee. No lawmakers responded. The special committee was formed earlier this month by outgoing House Speaker Dean Plocher. The St. Louis area representative claims it is time to address, quote, violent crime committed by undocumented immigrants.
The message needs to be, if you're not here in the state of Missouri legally, you're going to be detained and you're going to be deported if you're committing crimes.
Lawmakers were asked for data backing up their claims that immigrants commit a large number of violent crimes when the committee was announced. The lawmakers have not produced any such data. Committee Chair Representative Lane Roberts says this committee will be finding that data.
Our challenge is to try to identify the magnitude of the problem.
In order to gather that data, the committee will travel the state, having meetings in several cities, including Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, and more. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon, WGEM News.